Hello there and welcome to the third week of Peachtober. If you've missed the second or first week, I will leave them just here and down below in a playlist. I've got my sketchbook out and this week's prompts look really cool, so let's get started. The first prompt of week 3 is weather, and as you can see by the original thumbnail, I didn't really change this one up at all. The idea that I had was to use the ink to do a nice colourful background and then do a black ink layer on top that's kind of in the shape of like an angry lightning bolt. Unfortunately, I did make quite a few mistakes with this one, and they were like really simple mistakes. It was just with the lightning bolts, I just kind of went straight in with the ink without realising the shape that it should have been underneath. I wanted the lightning bolt to look very simple, a little bit like a weather symbol, and the reason that I have simple pieces in like this is because honestly at this point I was really tired and I like to have some really simple ideas during my art challenges just to give myself a little bit of a break. I take part in challenges slightly differently in the way that I do multiple per day and finish slightly earlier, but at this point I hadn't had a single day off, so I kind of was really tired, and having slightly easier pieces that you don't really need to think for is a great way to avoid burnout. The next prompt is sidekick. I think this is the hardest prompt of the entire challenge. The only thing that I could really think of were different characters in movies and TV scenes, and then I thought like that would be really hard to try and make two iconic characters in such a short space of time and actually make it look good and recognisable. So my partner had the idea of painting a robin to kind of paint it as a pun. I've never painted a robin before. I don't tend to do birds. I've done a macaw, but I don't think I've done any other birds really. I had planned to leave most of the ink showing, but I ended up adding quite a bit of gouache because this bird was not looking like a bird. It ended up looking a lot more like a random bird than an actual robin, unfortunately, but it's still kind of cute, I guess. Here is the original thumbnail sketch for blush. I honestly didn't stray very much from this. I used pink and green ink, which is a little bit of a crazy combination, but I was hoping that it would sort of make a skin tone. I feel like it did a little bit, but I'm not too sure. I wanted to take the opportunity to do a portrait wherever I could because portraits are my thing, I really enjoy them, and whilst I did want to do this challenge, I also wanted to get some more portrait experience whilst I was going, so when I could, I did try and do one, and this was one of them. I was aiming to paint a portrait of a gal that has very obvious blush on her cheeks, a little bit like the circus kind of look. That was sort of what I was going for, and I feel like it did change quite a bit. I ended up going for pink hair and accents just because of the two colours that I chose. I thought I would lean into that a little bit more. Then I reached for my jelly gouache and decided to add some details. Honestly, I'm really not sure about this stage. I don't know. It simultaneously makes and breaks the piece. I love the flowiness that was underneath, and I do think it was a good idea to add some gouache accents to refine some detail. I really like the hair. I think the hair is definitely an improvement, but I do think think it could have been done better. I think it was a cool way to combine the two mediums. This is only my second ever portrait with ink. The first one I did was actually for Sweet in my first week of Peachtober, you might have seen. And I didn't want to use Nero colours this time. I wanted to use something slightly different. I just don't think the execution was very well, but it definitely has a lot of potential. The next prompt is snooze, and since it was the same day, I decided to go for a very similar theme. Here is the original thumbnail sketch. As you can see, it didn't change very much. The colour palette of blue and pink was a totally random decision at this point, because I'd done a couple of yellow pieces the day before. I think I just tried to avoid that for this day. Really, the majority of my colour choices were completely spontaneous and decided by whatever the previous day's colours were. I was kind of aiming for a subtle lo-fi look in a bedroom. That was sort of what I was aiming for, but it's such a weird style, this one. The ink is spread in such an odd way, and I used white gouache to try and refine it, but it's definitely a very odd style. I wanted the alarm clock to spell no. That was the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure was there, and I don't think it's very obvious at all that that's what it says. Still, I think the messy ink look and white gouache combination is a pretty fun one. And it's very different to anything that I've done before. Would you ever paint in this way? The next prompt is candle, and as you can see from the thumbnail sketch, I completely changed this idea. The first idea I had was a bunch of people surrounded by a campfire in a forest, but it wasn't a campfire, it was a candle in the middle. And I kind of thought, like, firstly, that wasn't a very strong idea to begin with. Secondly, I have no clue how to even begin with references for that kind of idea because it wasn't clear in my head to start with. And also, I think that's a lot of different components to fit into one painting when I'm trying to do multiple per day. So in the end, I went on my camera roll and I remembered that I took a photo at a wedding of these candles because they just looked really cool, and I had the idea to paint them one day. I think I've actually already drawn them, but I did want to paint them, so I just thought this would be a perfect opportunity. I toned the paper blue before adding the black ink, and I think that made the world of difference. The blue shines through in certain areas, but you can see the black is a lot cooler than what I did for Weather. Weather had quite a orange-brown undertone. This piece has totally grown on me, and I'm really happy with it now. The 20th prompt is bulb, and this idea really didn't change at all. The idea that I had was based on like old school Tumblr, the time when everyone had like themed accounts on Instagram and it was all about like taking aesthetic pictures of stuff that you have and using Photoshop and creating surreal art. It was that time. That's what I had in mind. So I thought of doing a light bulb with a landscape inside. I don't know if you have a clue what I'm talking about when I say that, but that's just the first thing that I thought of. When it comes to art challenges, I really don't put very much thought in whatsoever. I go for the first or second idea that comes in my head. I feel like that's the best way to work because otherwise I will talk myself out of a certain idea. And you'll see in an upcoming art vlog that I actually came up with these ideas whilst I was just sat on the beach. Like, I just did it really quickly. And it was the least stressful, most fun way to come up with these ideas. I used ink for the background and just had to try not to make any mistakes as I went around the edges. Because I wasn't able to use masking fluid, I did end up actually using a Posca to refine the edges a little bit because I felt like it wasn't totally smooth. This is handmade paper and the ink does spread quite a bit, so I think that probably contributed as well. I added some gouache on top, but I tried to keep a lot of the original ink elements. I think it's a pretty good combination of both, and I'm really loving these new Poscas that I got. They are so fun. They are thicker than fine liners. They're really fun. The last prompt of week 3 is slingshot, and for this one I knew originally that I didn't want to do a slingshot. This was the original plan that I had in mind and I didn't stray too much from it. I thought of Angie's camp in Skyrim, that was the kind of location I had in mind, but I wanted to do more of a target than a slingshot because I couldn't think of a lot for slingshot. I wanted to go more the target route. So the location is loosely based on Skyrim and I decided to do a iconic target in the middle. I used ink for the base layer, then I used Neo colours on top, and then I added a bit of water because I was just a little bit lost at that point. I got the Caran d'Ache Neo colours for my birthday and honestly I wanted them for so long. I was super excited, but ever since I've started using them I can't figure out how to actually use them, like what kind of style I like. They are fun, but I don't know how to make good art with them, so I'm definitely just winging it as I'm going along, trying to see what I can learn. I used gouache for the target. I felt like if I used ink it probably would have spread quite a lot. I really love the colour palette for this piece. I'm usually not a fan of warm tones, but I love that the yellow and pink that shines through underneath is so bright. I think it really makes it work. I don't think it's a fantastic piece to end on, but I hope you like it. Next week we've got a lot more gouache coming up and some pieces I'm super excited to show you. That's the third week of Peachtober done. I would love to know down below which one is your favourite. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and I would love if you could subscribe so you don't miss the final stretch. I'll see you on Sunday for more spooky art. Bye bye.